You drive past it every day, a ruin half swallowed by the bush, tucked behind a fast food car park. Once, this was the Pilgrim Inn, the first inn on the road across the Blue Mountains. Built when the west was still wilderness, it waited at the top of the climb, a place where dusted horses drank and weary travellers caught their breath before the long road through the mountains. Now it feeds curiosity, a relic in plain sight, and its story, like the road it once served, winds deep into Australia's earliest years. In 1814, Governor Lachlan Macquarie ordered William Cox to carve the first road across the Blue Mountains, completed just a year later. It was rough, narrow and steep, but it opened the way west. For 2 decades, the government restricted settlement beyond the Blue Mountains, but by the 1830s, the floodgates opened. Inns sprang up at regular intervals, shelters for travellers, mail coaches, and stockmen moving west. One of the first stood right here at the foot of the Blue Mountains, the Pilgrim Inn, built around 1825 on land granted to merchant and theatre owner Barnett Levy. It stood at the perfect spot, close enough to the steep ascent for a rest, but far enough to be safe from runaway wagons. Horses were watered, meals cooked over open hearths, gossip from Sydney passed with each new coach. By the late 1820s, the Pilgrim Inn had 12 rooms and stables, one of the cleanest, most convenient on the route, according to travellers and accounts. In 1832, innkeeper John Wood wrote to the Colonial Secretary, protesting a proposed road change that would cut behind this property. He complained it would destroy his garden, costly elegant stabling, stores and stockyards. That letter is the first glimpse of the inn's true scale. Veranda, kitchen, fencing, gardens, even formal front, refacing the highway. It wasn't just a pub, it was an outpost of civilization on a wild frontier. In 1837, the licence passed to Lewis Lines, and a year later the inn was leased again, newly renovated and repaired with fresh singles and expanded stables. It sold that same year to a Mr. Mace, who overhauled the property completely. By 1839, a rival appeared down the road, the late Lord Byron Inn. For years the second inn would confuse historians. 2 inns, 2 names, 1 legend. In 1852, James Wasco arrived, a name that would later live on in the town itself. He first managed the late Lord Byron, calling it the Old Pilgrim Inn, but in 1857 he purchased the original Pilgrim Inn and moved his family in. By then the building had grown, extra rooms, outbuildings, and a busy yard of carts, horses and locals stopping to trade and talk. When Wasco sold the site in 1869, the sale notice listed not just the house, but the numerous outbuildings and improvements, testimonies to the decades of expansion and adaptation. After Wasco's time, the inn's life faded quietly into domestic use. The Dean family took over in the 1870s, adding small extensions through the 1880s, one of the few reasons the walls still stand today. By the early 1900s, the Pilgrim Inn had lost its purpose. The Dean still owned the land, but rarely visited. No funds, no trade, just memories. In 1912, rail and road extensions erased the rival Lord Byron Inn entirely. Half a century later, tragedy struck again. In 1969, fire consumed the Pilgrim Inn itself. The roof collapsed, timbers charred, and all that remained were 3 sandstone walls and a sealed-off cellar. After the blaze, a small weatherboard cottage rose beside the ruins, later part of a nursery business. When that too closed, the bush crept back in. Today the site lies overgrown, the cellar buried, the foundations faint, the echoes strong. Archaeologists have since combed this ground, uncovering nails, crockery, glass, and fragments from nearly a century and a half of use. They tell of expansion, adaptation, and survival, proof that the small roadside inns can carry vast stories underground. Local memories still cling here too. Some link the place to the 1865 death of Sir Frederick Pottinger, the flamboyant police inspector shot nearby. Though historians debate the exact site, fact or legend, it adds another ghost to this already haunted crossroads. The Pilgrim Inn was the first on the mountain road, the second oldest in west of Sydney after Collett's at Hartley. Little else from that era survives. The weatherboard inn lies in ruins. The Woodford Academy transformed, others long gone. Here behind the car park stand 3 silent walls, a reminder that civilization was built one rest stop at a time. You could pass it 1,000 times and never know it's there, but once you've seen it, truly seen it, you'll never drive this road the same way again. Is that the original Pilgrim Inn or the later Lord Byron Inn people talk about? That's one of the most common questions, and it's easy to see why. There were 2 old inns along this stretch, and their stories have tangled together for nearly 2 centuries. The room behind the Blaxland McDonald's is the original Pilgrim Inn, built around 1825 on land granted to Barnett Levy, the same man who opened Sydney's first theatre. It was the first inn on the mountains, the true beginning of the long, dangerous road west. The other, the late Lord Byron Inn, came later, built in the late 1830s just down the road. For a time, travellers confused the two, and even historians did for decades afterward. That second inn was demolished in 1912 when the railway was widened, leaving only Pilgrim's walls behind. So what you see today isn't just an old ruin, it's the last surviving link to the earliest days of the Great Western Highway. The stone that once greeted bullock teams now sits in the shadow of drive-through lights, history hiding in plain sight.